Welcome to Everything Economics. We study microeconomics, macroeconomics, and every other type of economics here.
Welcome back, everyone. This is part 4 of the chapter The Monetary System. The book is Brief Principles of Macroeconomics, 5th edition by N. Gregory Menkeeff. In this part, we will understand the basics of how commercial banks create money, banks and the money supply. Banks can influence the quantity of demand deposits in the economy and the money supply. The banks, here we are specifically talking about the commercial banks, they can influence the quantity of demand deposits in the economy and the money supply. This is the process that we will mainly study in the next part, but here we just need to understand the basics of how the commercial banks will eventually create money. We will see the definitions and a little of the process as well. So banks and the money supply. Reserves are deposits that banks have received but have not loaned out. So this is the first definition, reserves. So reserves are the deposits that banks have received. The second definition is deposits that we need to understand here, but have not loaned out. Third, loaned out. This definition has 3 parts. So let's start with deposits first. Deposits are the money that banks receive from its consumers, the customers. When you go to the bank and you put money into the banks, for example, $1,000, if you are putting $1,000 into the bank to keep it safe or for whatever reasons, those are the deposits that the bank receives from its customers or consumers. Those are the deposits. These deposits, these $1,000 that you have put into the bank, how does bank uses it? The bank can loan it out. It can give out as a loan. But the question is, will the bank give out all of those $1,000s as loans? Can it? I mean, the bank normally gains when it gives out loan, right? It profits from giving out loans through interest rates. So if the interest rate is, let's say, 8%, then the bank will be getting interest of 8% from the people that it has loaned out money to. So it's always beneficial for banks to give out as much loan as possible. But the problem is, if the banks give out all of its deposits, for example, this $1,000 is by person A, and the bank has like thousands of customers, and when you add deposits of all of those customers, the bank might have deposits in millions. So it will be profitable for banks to give out all of that money in the form of loans. But the problem is, if it gives out all of that money in the form of loans, well, what will happen to the customers? Bank will not have enough money to give out to its customers when they come to get their money back. So for example, if the bank gives out all of its money in the form of loans to different people, and you go out to take out your $1,000 back from the bank will not have those $1,000s. So to make sure that the system works smoothly and the system doesn't collapse, the central bank gives out a reserve ratio, and the reserve ratio can be in the form of reserves. What I mean by that is that once the central bank tells commercial banks that they have to keep certain amount of their deposits as reserves, they give out a percentage. It can be 5% or 10%. If the central bank says you have to keep 5% of your deposits as reserves, then the commercial banks are they are obliged by law to keep 5% as reserves. In this case, when you give out $1,000 into the bank, out of those $1,000, they have to keep $50 as reserves. So that's how the system basically works. That's how the central banks make sure that the system doesn't collapse. So now I hope you understand what reserves are, what deposits are, and how deposits and loans are connected. In a fractional reserve banking system, banks hold a fraction of the money deposited as reserves and lend out the rest. It's the same as we discussed before, but this system is called fractional reserve banking system. This is the system that is followed mostly throughout the world right now. Banks hold a fraction of the money deposited as reserves and lend out the rest. So this means that the money that the banks get from their customers, they keep certain amount of it as reserves, and they lend out rest of the amount to people who require it. And here is the interesting part. When a bank makes a loan from its reserves, the money supply increases. So what this means is that when a bank makes a loan to people, it is increasing money supply in the economy. Now, the purpose here is to understand these definitions here, reserves, deposits, and loans, and also fractional reserve banking. And here I've just mentioned how loans create money supply, but this is what we will discuss in the next part, so I will not get into details into the process, because I have discussed it in a lot of detail in the next part. Here you just need to understand that the loans that the banks make, they directly influence the money supply. Alright, to the last section of this part, problems in controlling the money supply. Now, since I have already mentioned that commercial banks are directly involved in creating money, when they give out loan, they are creating money, they are increasing money supply. So it creates all kind of problems when the central bank or the Fed has to control the money supply. The Fed's control of the money supply is not precise. The Fed must wrestle with two problems that arise due to fractional reserve banking. Fractional reserve banking, as I've already discussed, is the commercial banks that they have to keep certain amount of the deposits as reserves, and the other amount they can give it out as loans. So this is fractional reserve banking. So there are two problems with this system that the central bank or the Fed has to face. The first is the Fed does not control the amount of money that households choose to hold as deposits in banks. The Fed or the central bank, it does not control how much money the households put into the banks as deposits. And since the commercial banks use those deposits as loans, which further creates money or increases money supply, this deposits, the central bank or the Fed cannot control these deposits. If these deposits increase, the money supply will increase as well. If these deposits decrease, the creation of money will decrease. The second problem the Fed faces is the Fed does not control the amount of money that bankers choose to lend. Again, lending or giving out the money as loan. Since this is the decision by the commercial banks, how much money they are willing to lend out to consumers or to people, the Fed or the central bank cannot control that. Once they give out reserve ratio, they cannot control how much money the commercial banks can give out as loans. The commercial banks, they just have to follow the rule, which is keep as much money as required as reserves, and they can lend out the rest, and they can also decide if they want to lend out less money. So this the process of putting money into the bank, that is deposits, and the process of lending out money to consumers, this is the process that creates money. And since the central bank or the Fed cannot control this process, since the central bank cannot control how much deposits the households put in the banks or how much money the banks lend to people, the central bank cannot precisely control money supply or calculate how much money is being created every day or in a certain period of time. So this was that's it for this part. We understood the basic definitions and we built the foundations of on how the money is created. We will discuss how money is created into the next part, but in this part I just wanted you to understand the basic definitions and the problems that the fractional reserve banking system creates. All right, so I will see you guys in the next part. Take care. Bye.